I am so happy to have Jeff and Elise here to give their time, their volunteers, to tell us about Braver Angels. And especially I'm excited that they're going to lead us through some depolarizing within activities. I actually attended a 3-hour depolarizing within workshop, a Braver Angels workshop, about 3 weeks ago and found it really useful. And I know how much more repetition I need, so I'm planning to attend it the next time it's offered as well. I hope that will be pretty soon. In the meantime, I'm really looking forward to the reminders tonight. So regarding the value and the challenge of depolarizing within, at least that's more in my control than trying to depolarize externally. I do believe what's said that, peace begins within. And I believe that it would benefit the country more, and certainly me more, if I did focus on the internal changes I need to make toward not adding to the polarization. However, not to be over dramatic, but in the moments, some of the moments that I think about what the other side is doing, I immediately experience my polarized Mr. Hyde, as in Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, self-emerging. And I hear myself speaking with a bitter, resentful tone. I know that in my mind, and sometimes out loud, I'm labeling the other as stupid and heartless and destroying democracy, and generally being angry, fearful, and very judgmental. And then I feel like a hypocrite because I aspire to be consistently calm, compassionate, non-judgmental, and to seek to understand, not to blame or condemn. So I don't like feeling that bitterness and anger. I know it doesn't accomplish anything good. It's not good for my body cells. It's not good for the emotional climate of the planet to put even more rage and ugly energy into the noosphere, the consciousness, so to speak, of our planet. And so the reason I'm here, the reason I wanted Jeff and Elise to come is because I really appreciate the Braver Angels perspective and the workshops that I've attended, because they have helped me make some shifts in perspective and language. So I can feel like I'm being less of a hypocrite and walking my talk a little more. So, Kaizen, that term, small steps toward continuous improvement. So that's the process that I feel like I'm in. I first learned about Better Angels, that's what it was called, back in 2017. I like the term Braver Angels a lot because Ron, as he said, and Elaine, it takes a lot of courage. I first attended them back in 2017. I was invited by a fellow volunteer mediator to attend a workshop. And since then, I've participated in a number of workshops and helped with some. And I always find the content helpful and well presented. I've especially been impressed by the neutrality of the facilitators, and I aspire to be more like that. And I really also appreciate how the participation is structured to bring out a more nuanced understanding of each other, something that is so often lost in the I'm right, you're wrong kind of energy. I like that they focus on finding common ground, even when I don't even think there is, but people do. And I especially appreciate, as I've said, the support to help me look at what I can change in myself. So for me, Braver Angels offers me ways to moderate my Mr. Hyde self and to take tiny steps toward Rumi's beautiful vision. And I know you've all heard some version of this quote. There is a field beyond all notions of right and wrong. Come meet me there. So as a result, in part at least, of these workshops, I've been able to be in that field a little more while talking to friends and relatives who have views that I don't share. So, and it has been a choice, do I I want this friendship. Do I want this relationship with a relative or not? And I do. And so just being able to maintain the relationship and get a little more understanding has been so helpful. I've heard it said that at this time in history, it's more important, more valuable to consider that there's a struggle going on between duality, right, wrong, light, dark, good, bad, and oneness, a recognition that we are all humans, all connected in some way. That struggle is more important and more real, I guess, than the one that we label as between light and dark. So restricted as we are in this realm of duality, and with the limited and who knows how reliable information we have, I don't think anybody has the big picture. I don't think it's possible to know which side is right and which side is wrong. So getting caught in that duality, that dynamic, is not helpful at all. I do feel pretty confident, though, that compassionately collaborating with each other as fellow human beings who, whatever their views, all want to feel happy, healthy, and fulfilled is essential. And I think Braver Angels and the workshops are making that more possible. And I noticed that it really looks like Braver Angels is growing, which is wonderful. It reminds me of that Margaret Mead quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." So I am so grateful again for the work that so many different volunteers are doing. And just one final note. So it's interesting for me to look at the day jobs of Jeff and Elise, which I think is in the email that Dottie sent. Because as I've said, I think this divisiveness is very unhealthy for our bodies as well as for the planet. And I also think that we desperately need the wisdom of collaborative thinking. So lo and behold, as you can see in Dottie's blurb, Jeff's day job is in promoting good health and nutrition and being a health coach, yay. And Elise works to promote productive meetings. So I think they're bringing a lot to us to share tonight, and I really look forward to what you're going to say. So thank you so much for being here.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Victoria. We've got our work cut out to live up to that billing that Victoria just gave us. In fact, I'm not so sure that Victoria shouldn't be leading this meeting tonight. She's known about Braver Angels since 2017, its inception. Elise and I just found it a couple of years ago. So thank you, Victoria.
But you're stepping up to give your time to it, and I really admire that. So thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you for having us here. I appreciate it. So we're gonna today do a little bit of workshop work, but we're also gonna just share more about the organization, because the workshops tend to take 2 to 4 hours or more.
Or 6 or 8.
Right. So we won't be doing a ton of workshop stuff, but we will be sharing an introduction to Braver Angels, which is a presentation. So for those of you who are called to step up, but don't necessarily feel brave on your own yet, know that we've been given great resources so that our bravery just has to go just far enough to read out loud in public, which we will do for you now. So we're going to take turns. We're going to share this presentation. We'll share some of the exercises. You'll have a chance to talk to each other.
Actually,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, Elise. I was just going to say, why don't we start, instead of with the presentation, maybe just personal story of how each of us came to find Braver Angels and what motivates us to be involved? We should have talked about that beforehand.
Go for it.
Okay, I'll go first since I opened my big mouth. Well, you all know me now, thanks to that great introduction. Jeff Spitzer, I've long been just disheartened by the divide in this country. I didn't know what to do about it. I told my wife 3-4 years ago, I was like, we got to do something. We got to get involved and do something about this. There's people just blaming each other for all the wrongs in the world, and they got it wrong. It's like, let's help bring people together. They're not listening to each other. They're just pointing the finger and blaming. And I wanted to do something about it. My wife was like, you are crazy. I don't want to get anywhere near any of that. And I don't blame her. So in the summer of 2020, all the aftermath of George Floyd and the unrest were just raging through the country. I just had enough. And I decided that, based on my belief that the root of most of our issues are that we don't talk to each other anymore. We don't try to understand each other. We just label and blame, and we believe that anything that we do is right and anything that they do is wrong. I think it was, who was it? A comedian, George Carlin? I might be wrong, but talked about how when you're driving, like, anybody who drives faster than you is a maniac, and anybody who drives slower than you is a moron. It's like, sort of what I see happening in the country right now is we all believe that we have it right and they have it wrong. And our side has it right. Anybody who thinks like me is right and they're wrong. Anyway, I just was at my wit's end and looked for organizations that brought people together to better understand each other, found Braver Angels and jumped right in. Wasn't long before I found myself agreeing to be a volunteer state coordinator. And I've been in that role for almost 2 years now, and have been really thrilled over this last couple of years to work with people like Elise here, who also believe in the mission. And even when we have so much going on in our lives, we still make time to do things like this. That's how important it is to us. So I'll shut up now and let Elise have a few words.
So I also joined in 2020, partially because of recognizing what was happening in our communities, but more for me, it was about what was happening in my family and with my friends. So I went to Lewis and Clark College here in Portland, very liberal. I'm the blue co-chair for Braver Angels Oregon, and Jeff's my red co-chair friend. And my friends and my family that are my age started to say things that didn't sound like what I recognized from when we were going through high school and college about how we appreciate difference and diversity. They started talking about, punching people they didn't agree with, and canceling and shutting things down. And I was confused by this. But I was more concerned when I would watch interactions in my family, because my stepfather runs a sheep farm in Junction City. His grandparents, he grew up in Elkton, Ron. So my background's Silverton, and we're just like, the family is very, very, very red. And when we would come together, it would get ugly, and I didn't understand what was happening. I thought there has got to be some way to get in this mix and make this about how we are all here for each other when things are going wrong, how we are all here for each other, that maybe we don't vote the same, but we all like to eat the same. We all like to, help out when Granny gets sick. Like, all of the things that we used to be not a problem started to fray. So as the society started to fray and families started to fray, and we went online, Braver Angels moved their workshops online and started needing help with Zoom, which turns out to be right in my ballpark of something I could do. I said, I will step up and click the Zoom buttons, which sort of slippery sloped its way into being the Oregon State coordinator helper too. So I'm here to help continue to do that. And since then, we've had an opportunity to become friends, and have each other at our family's gatherings. I host a party. Jeff came, and my dad told me, he said, you know, I talked to that friend of yours and he's okay. Now, who was the red? And I'm like, it was that guy. You talked to him for like an hour and a half and it was great. And he was shocked and happy. So that opportunity has been a really great blessing for us, I think. And with that, shall we dive in?
Let's dive in.
Okay. If you want to
Elise,
holler at us at any point and say, hey, you know what, we're so tired of hearing you talk. We have a question. Please, please do.
Yeah. Elise is going to pull up the screen and just let you know we're going to, she already touched on this a bit, but we're going to give you an overview of Braver Angels. So it's going to be a lot of information on the organization and what Braver Angels does. And then we're going to walk through a short activity together from our Depolarizing Within workshop to help you discover how polarized you are, if you are. And then we can leave you with some next steps tonight.
Okay. So I don't like that man. I must get to know him. This is a quote that's attributed to Abraham Lincoln, and it really does embody the spirit of Braver Angels. If you're like me, you've been hearing a lot about Abraham Lincoln these days because of the division we face. And hopefully, like me, you're interested in doing what you can do to make our country less divided. We all know about these divisions. But right now, I want to take a closer look at the personal cost of political polarization. And then we'll tell you some more about Braver Angels, including how our organization views polarization and what we can do about it. But first, let's define polarization.
So we're actually going to consider a more specific term called affective polarization. And that's what relates to our emotions and attitudes, because that's what Braver Angels is really trying to get at. Over the last few decades, you've probably noticed our emotions and attitudes towards our own party has stayed relatively the same or even gotten better. But it's those others, our view of the other party has gotten much, much worse.
And we're often filled with animosity, contempt, distrust, you name it, towards those who are of a different political party. Victoria talked about this kind of beautifully. So it's not just about the issues, right? It's about how we regard our fellow Americans who differ from us politically. It's not just about the issues, but about how we regard everybody. They are other, alien to us, strangers, incomprehensible, unlikable, untrustworthy as people, and morally compromised. Affective polarization is politically and particularly dangerous because, as we have seen, many people become willing to do anything to defeat the other party. We also tend to become unwilling to admit to few, if any, faults on our own side. We see our side as incredibly diverse, but the other side as all the same.
To get a sense of how polarized we really are, one telling measure is how we're willing to, who we're willing to welcome into our family. As you can see on the chart there, in 1960, 4% of Republicans and 4% of Democrats thought they'd be unhappy if their child married somebody from the other party. Today, 35% of Republicans and 45% of Democrats feel that way. We treat people who we disagree with as if they're worth less than us, and that they're certainly not worth joining our family.
But the good news is that studies have also shown we have much more in common than we think. And that's where Braver Angels comes in. So here's the mission of Braver Angels. Braver Angels brings Americans together to bridge the partisan divide and strengthen our democratic republic. We have a pledge that includes the phrase, as individuals, we try to understand the other side's point of view, even if we don't agree with it. And admittedly, that's difficult. So we recognize the need to listen and then try and understand.
Another part of our pledge says, in our communities, we engage those that we disagree with, looking for common ground and ways to work together. This too is admittedly a challenge, but as an organization, we look to have conversations that may not lead to common ground. They may,
but
or they may not.
That's right. You never
They
know. It's amazing how often they do, right?
Absolutely. So our rule seeks to have red and blue leaders at every level of the organization. That's why you see Elise and I here tonight as a red and a blue representing the leadership for Oregon. Now, having said this, we admit that our organization currently has more blues than reds, but we're actively seeking to bring that back in balance. That's also a hint for any reds in the room. We need you.
So Braver Angels seeks to reflect America, and regarding race, ethnicity, social and economic class, our constant striving is to be an organization that reflects the country we seek to serve. In all, it comes down to our core values. Respect. We will talk about our fellow citizens on the other side with respect for their intelligence and goodwill. We'll avoid characterizing them as deserving of our disdain or pity. Humility. We'll talk about our own side with the knowledge that our leaders are not perfect and that our current polity solutions are not complete answers to our nation's complex problems. Honesty. We will allow people to feel what they're feeling. We will not ask them to hide their satisfaction or grief regarding current events. And responsible citizenship. We will emphasize that it's up to all of us, we the people, to depolarize our politics and meet our common challenges.
Boy, I divided this pretty unevenly. Let me take this slide, Elise, give you a breather. So our work at Braver Angels is to build a house united. And although we've told you so far that it might seem as if the organization is just reds and blues, that is where we see the divide. People of all political stripes are welcome. We have members who are registered as independents. I am unaffiliated voter. I lean conservative, I lean red, but I am an unaffiliated voter. And we have others, who are independent or Green Party or what have you. Oftentimes we just call those in the middle purple, and a mix of red and blue. And that's what I consider myself, is a purple. So independents can take part in almost all of our events, and they're welcome to really help build this house united. So our efforts are going to take every single one of us, no matter our political affiliation. So we told you how Elise and I got involved. Let's tell you a little bit about how Braver Angels began. This picture was taken at our very first workshop, right after the 2016 election. Based on the concepts taken from marriage counseling of all places, the organization started just after that election, bringing reds and blues together to help them better understand each other in an effort to reduce our polarization. Braver Angels was originally founded as Better Angels, as Victoria alluded to. based on a line from Lincoln's inaugural speech, appealing to the better angels of our nature. Our mission and membership has changed and grown, and therefore so has our name. We now emphasize the need to be brave and show the courage needed to address our country's divide, hence the name Braver Angels. Now we're going to share with,
Go
I'll
ahead.
just finish it off. We're going to share with you a short video that talks more about the problem of polarization, but it also explains a little bit more about Braver Angels itself. I really like this video, and I hope you do too.
Movie time. It's like the best part of math class in school. You get to be a movie.
Politics has always been a passionate subject, and we've always had deep political disagreements. That's the way it's supposed to be. But we've gotten to the point where people can't even talk to one another. Americans no longer see their political opponents as simply wrong or misguided. They see them as bad people whose ways of thinking are dangerous and incomprehensible. They see them as enemies. This level of rancor and mistrust threatens our democracy, and it makes it harder for us to move forward as a nation, regardless of who the president is.
The fact that we live in what feels like, some people call it a cold civil war, that takes a toll on all of us.
We've been excommunicated from a lot of our friends in the last couple of years, and it makes me sad.
This is one organization that's doing a lot to kind of overcome that and get people back to where we were, which is neighbors, friends, communities.
Better Angels was born in response to the crisis of polarization. We are truly bipartisan. From our staff to our funding to our board of directors, we're evenly split, half conservative, half liberal. Everything we do comes from the bottom up. We're an almost entirely volunteer-led operation. We wanted to see, could we get together a group of folks who'd voted for Trump and a group of folks who'd voted for Clinton and get them in a room together to see how can we bring people together to not get them to agree or to come to the middle, but to maybe change how they think about.
Apparently that's enough of that. I don't know what happened to the video. Do you want me to try and make it just quit itself? Let's see where we are. There we go.
Politics has always.
Our country can serve humanity in a way that is actually beautiful and actually does us justice.
This is not a left-wing movement, this is not a right-wing movement, but it is indeed an American movement. We still have it in us to be champions for what is right and what is graceful and what is decent here in the United States.
In this time of public health crisis, Braver Angels is taking its work online, hosting weekly online debates, virtual book discussions, concerts, skills training courses, and soon, one-on-one red-blue conversations. As Americans stay home to protect their fellow citizens, Braver Angels is bringing us together in new ways and helping us find the courage needed to transcend our partisan differences and overcome this challenge. Go to braverangels.org, sign up to join our email list, and at the end of the day, try to treat each other with respect, empathy, and find the courage needed to talk to people, even if, and perhaps especially when, you don't agree with them.
Okay.
Time
All
for
right.
a couple updates in that video.
So, you want me to take this part?
Why don't we just leave it on the screen for a minute, and you can see the timeline in general, where they started, where they really started accelerating. Elise and I both got involved in 2020 during that explosive growth phase. And we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about things like the new initiative, Braver Politics.
So today there are over 10,000 members in the national organization, and it is growing. And I think that number is probably also a little out of date. I think it's quite a bit more than that now.
I think it is.
Yeah. So we now divide our program offerings into 3 categories. Grow Bravely, which is training and discussion workshops that build mutual understanding and respect for our commonalities and differences. Pair Up Bravely, which is one-on-one conversations that bring people together across differences. So you can sign up and get a one-on-one conversation that's a red-blue conversation, or an urban-rural conversation, or multi-ethnic, or multi-generational pairs. So all kinds of ways to find somebody who's got a real different perspective than you do. And then experience bravely. So a wide variety of experiences that deepen connection and understanding between members, like debates and book and movie discussions and common ground building activities. The Red Blue workshop focuses on a wide range of topics with the goal of understanding one another. Common ground workshops focus on a single issue with the goal of mutual agreement to inspire action. So that could take the form of engaging with the media or writing an op-ed piece or reaching out to elected officials to hold a town hall. We're doing one with Lewis and Clark soon, I think, on abortion. And we have done common ground workshops on COVID-19 mandates and a number of other, like, there are not topics that we shy from, basically.
So our skills training consists of small and large groups with paired or group skills practice. So you actually in the workshop get to practice the skills that you learn in the workshop with somebody else. The Skills for Bridging the Divide has the goal of creating constructive, empathetic communication across differences. The Polarizing Within, which you've heard a lot about and we'll get a little taste of here in a few minutes, has the goal of understanding our own inner polarization and engaging our own side without demonizing the other side, which I think is really foundational in this work. And the other thing you see here is Families in Politics, which is the goal of those family dynamics. We've got the holidays coming up here soon. Who's ready for some arguments around the dinner table? Not me. And of course, we also don't shy away from race and have a workshop dedicated to the polarizing conversations about race. We offer many other programs to build relationships and continue the conversation from the workshops, including one-on-one conversations, as you've already heard a little bit about. Those are live. You can get paired with somebody, or if you know somebody across the divide that you want to have a conversation with, you can just download the conversation guides and engage with them. Just stay within the lines. They draw it all out for you. There's debates that are in a collaborative search for the truth. So it's not just about winning the debate and making the best points. They actually, there is some collaboration in there. And then, as Elise already talked about, the book and movie discussions, red blue pairs, and we have local alliances. So our statewide alliance is virtual, as we are here today virtually, but we are working to get more in-person alliances started around the country. We just launched one this summer in Klamath Falls. We're very close to having one in Grants Pass. Would love to have one set up in Portland again and in other parts of the state. We've had some interest out in the Bend area and in Eugene. And so all you need to start an alliance, honestly, is a red and a blue co-chair. You just need two people to help make that thing go.
And then what do you get? What are the results? I just put an ice cube in my mouth. So the results are that we can reduce effective polarization. So we're finding that the events help people on both sides of the red-blue divide decrease stereotyped thinking about the other side, which leads them to see others as individuals, not faceless people who for some reason are standing in the way of getting good things done. In general, 70 to 80% of participants in our workshops report better understanding and change in perceptions, which may lead to changes in attitudes and actions. And here is the impact of our red-blue workshop specifically. You can see we're addressing that concept of effective polarization through data. So 85% feel less estranged or angry. They gain a significant understanding of those on the other side of the political divide. And 87% gain a significant understanding, and 91% see areas of commonality between those on the other side and themselves.
It's not just our own studies that Braver Angels does that shows that our efforts are working. In 2021, A study across 7 different universities shows that Braver Angels workshops had an impact on depolarization, leading to this new theory that shows if people are given information and an emotional understanding of another group, they become motivated, motivated and moved to empathize more with that group. Who here has ever, like, really, going back to that Abraham Lincoln quote, thought somebody was just a jerk or whatever, until you talk to them and you realize, oh, maybe they're just shy. Happens all the time.
So here's something super important. Our goal is not to try to make people change their views. That rarely happens, especially if there's not already a relationship of trust between the people who are talking. But they do consistently change their views of each other. So we're not trying to change views on issues. We're trying to change views of the other party, the other perspective. And that does work. And it's consistent with our goal to reduce effective polarization. It also helps people let go of stereotypes. And I think it will allow us to eventually find more collaborative solutions to our country's problem. Because when we truly begin to turn down the rancor, we can become more willing to take a deeper dive to discover there might be valuable information from a different perspective. I think I'd pause here for a second, because we ran a red-blue workshop in Oregon, and we had some pretty strong opinions walk into the room, one of which was a lady who was running for political office in the Eugene area. And she came because she knew she would have to represent people on both sides, but she wasn't sure how she could do it when she would have to represent so many people who didn't believe in science. That's what she said. She walked in, she's like, well, everybody on the right doesn't believe in science, and I'm not sure how I can lead that. And she walked out of that workshop after having spoken to many of our red participants, realizing that her stereotype was completely driven by the media and wasn't based on the reasons that conservatives were objecting to some of the policies. It wasn't a lack of belief in science. It was a different lived experience, a different story that they had that helped them come to those perspectives differently. And in fact, they were interested in actually supporting a lot of her ideas, as long as the economic impact to their communities meant they could still feed their children. Like, oh, this isn't about hating on science. This is about feeding your children. That's different, right? She came out very, yeah, right? So.
We're going to tell you some more stories here of others who have had their thoughts and their feelings of the other side changed, because as we've been talking about, one of the ways to reduce polarization is finding commonalities, what brings us together rather than what divides us. So in this picture here, you see an example that came from one of the very first, actually it was the first workshop that you saw pictured earlier. Here you see Greg, a Christian conservative and a diehard Trump supporter, and Kuyar, an Iranian immigrant of Muslim heritage and a strong progressive Democrat. When they first met, they were incredibly suspicious of each other, and but they formed a true friendship, and each actually even visited each other's place of worship to learn more about the other person.
So seeing people as individuals, not stereotypes, we have to remember that people are individual and not just red or blue. For example, in another one of our red-blue pair stories, we have Marissa, who's from California, who's been involved in startups, and she's a vegetarian. But she's also a Christian, a conservative, who believes in the Second Amendment rights and capitalism. So she found a friend in Steve, who's a progressive liberal, who also is a Christian and a consultant who helps businesses compete in the market. If they'd focused on their red-blue status, they might have missed all of the things that they had in common.
Recognizing others as worthy of respect and admiration, regardless of their political affiliation or their choices. That's pretty key in all this. So another red-blue pair are Mel, who left the Unitarian Universalist Church because of its progressive politics, and Jamie, an ordained Unitarian Universalist pastor. While they could have resented each other because of their church choice, they instead became friends and co-state coordinators in Virginia. How about that?
So we have a lot of examples like this of people we met through Braver Angels and have become close friends. Another example of this is the Karens from Pennsylvania. Becoming close friends after meeting through Braver Angels has helped them ask hard questions of the other and still maintain a solid friendship. As Braver Angels has grown, we've also seen the need to reach out to certain special interest groups, including Angels of Color Caucus, to encourage people of color to join Braver Angels and provide programming of special interest to them. They're a mix of red, blue, and other who do not identify as white or Caucasian. The Working People's Project, which is a politically and racially diverse group of working class Americas without a 4-year degree. And the Red Caucus, designed to strengthen the participation of conservatives and libertarians within Braver Angels.
So imagine what it would be like if we all approached our country's issues like this. A good national union in many ways looks like a good marriage. There'll be disagreements, often heated, but there always remains respect and warmth for those in the other party. At times, both sides will find a way to work together, even if they do not entirely agree. Sounds a lot like a marriage, right?
We're super close to the end of this part. The future is very bright at Braver Angels, and we are already working on the following initiatives. So this is the new stuff coming up. Telling the American Story, which is using our growing media initiative, includes a podcast, Americans Public Forum, We the People's Forum, the Braver Angels music team, op-eds, other publications, all kinds of stuff. Like, the word is getting out. We're scaling at grassroots, fostering local alliance development through a leadership academy and a well-defined alliance journey. This is part of what we're focusing on here in Oregon. And then modeling strategic partnerships, seeking partnerships with strategically important organizations that help amplify each other's work. We're influencing our institutions, building relationships on college campuses and within Congress through custom programs designed for each venue. And convening our national convention. Our third national convention hosts hundreds of delegates representing the organization and reflecting America, and empowered to make real decisions about our future.
All right, this is the last thing we're going to talk to you about before we actually engage with you. So bear with me, because this is an important initiative. It's an initiative that we hope will have far-reaching impact in our country. Braver Angels recently started working on an initiative called Braver Politics, because we've been talking all this time about how we as normal, regular citizens can better understand the other side. What if our politicians actually started behaving in that manner and got curious? How great would that be, right? So this whole Braver Politics initiative is designed to create an environment where we use Braver Angels organizers to provide evidence-based, citizen-led opportunities for officials and their staff. We want to get our elected officials at every level, local, state, federal, to find the skills and make commitments to work together productively across the partisan divide. The end goal is an America where citizens trust elected officials, voters in both parties trust elections, and our political institutions reflect the spirit of citizenship and common purpose. This photo that you see on the screen represents Representative Dean Phillips, a Democrat from Minnesota, and Representative Dusty Johnson, a South Dakota Republican, who are two of our most prominent supporters. Braver Angels has actually already started this work with members of Congress and in local governments around the country. So, with that, I'm sure you're really tired of hearing us read. We're tired of reading too. But before we get into the activity where we can actually engage your brain cells a little more and get you thinking about yourself and how all this applies to you in real life, thought we'd pause and see if there were any questions before we do that. All right, you're gonna need something to write with. So
oh no, Elaine is so wiggly. She's got such wiggly question hands.
There she is. Go for it, Elaine.
No, it's not a question. I was waiting to see if you're going to say or comments or something. I just need to breathe a sigh of relief before we shift gears. Like, oh, I'm hugely it was really scary for me to even consider being here tonight. I wasn't feeling that brave, and political conflict is something I'm just, like Ron said, you know, and any kind of conflict. So I just don't do politics. So this is a huge relief for me to have you step us into, get my toe barely in the water, and it was a safe place, and swoosh it around and explain what you do and how you're doing it and what your philosophy and your value, just that whole thing. I can feel my body is going, oh, okay, maybe I'll actually participate in this exercise. We'll see. But thank you. This was really good.
I promise you, Elaine, it's a very harmless exercise.
Well, it's yeah. You might shed a stereotype or two, so that can be a little uncomfortable. But otherwise, no worries. Thank you. All right. Well, let's do a sample exercise from the Depolarizing Within workshop. So if you have it available, you might want a pencil and paper at one point. I'm going to take a couple of quick notes down, and then we will also be giving you a chance to talk to each other. So we're going to begin by looking at a way for each of us to assess how polarized we are in our own mind and our heart. We're going to talk about how to change our polarizer just a tiny bit without being critical, without stereotyping, dismissing, ridiculing, or contempt for our fellow citizens. So you might be wondering, where do you start depolarizing? The natural inclination is to jump right in and try to start depolarizing the interaction between political opposites or orientations of color. And of course, I can hear that is not the natural inclination for some of you here. Natural inclination is like, no, thank you. Because that's a warranted concern. That's a complex interaction. And Braver Angels has specific workshops that address those kinds of interactions, like the Red-Blue workshop, like the skills for bridging the divide. But today we're going to start with perhaps a surprising source of depolarization, which is ourselves. And in fact, a surprising amount of today's environment of toxic polarization is driven by how we talk with like-minded people about people on the other side.
Let's talk about the four horsemen. Of course, I'm referring to the four horsemen of polarization. See, we become agents of polarization when we use any of the four horsemen of polarization: stereotyping, dismissing, ridiculing, and contempt. These offer us artificial unity, like only smart people like you and me know what the country needs. An outrage machine, there are those crazy people on the other side again. And the illusion that vanquishing the other side will lead to a political promised land. As we retreat into our political silos, people on the other side become not just strangers, but enemies. How we talk among ourselves about them fuels fires that threaten our democracy. So what if we learn the discipline of non-polarizing attitudes and words about the political other, with whom we do share a national past and future? So this takes us to the next slide to talk about the goals of this activity.
So the goals today are to build more awareness of our own inner polarizer and ways to be aware of it. If you join us for the full workshop, and I do think we have one coming up soon, we share skills for being critical without dismissing, ridiculing, or contempt, and skills for intervening in a constructive way in social conversations that veer into contempt and ridicule for people who hold other political beliefs. Now, please remember, when we talk about polarization, we're not referring to sharp disagreements on issues or philosophy, right? That's healthy in a democracy. We're talking about how we regard and talk about large groups of ordinary people on the other political side.
So, my inner polarizer. Today, we're going to begin with a way for each of us to assess how polarized we are in our own mind and heart. We'll talk about how to change our internal polarizer and how to be critical without stereotyping, dismissing, ridiculing, or contempt.
And here's the bit where you need your pencil. We're going to ask you 6 questions. And for each one, you're going to write down privately into yourself your reflections on your thoughts, attitudes, and feelings about the large number of people who differ from you politically. For each question, you're going to indicate your response from often to sometimes to never. Keep in mind, this is not about how you feel about specific issues like immigration or healthcare, or specific political figures like Biden, Trump. This is not what that's about. Or specific people in your life, even like that sibling who's the polar opposite from you in all of your beliefs, or how you feel about a particular fringe group on the other side. This is about how you think about the large number of your fellow Americans who differ from you politically. When answering these questions, you might find it helpful to think about all those people who support a politician like Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders, or policies like pro-choice or the wall or single-payer healthcare that you find to be appalling or bad for the country. Or you can think about groups of people on your own political side who drive you crazy. Okay, so I'm going to read the question and then you can circle your choice. Question 1. How often do I find myself thinking about those people on the other political side without much regard for the variation among them? So usually we're really aware of the variation within our own group. Often, sometimes, or never.
Anybody need more time? All right, let's get to the second one. How often do I find myself assigning mainly self-serving or negative motives to the other group, and mainly positive motives to my group? Often, sometimes, or never.
Okay, question 3. How often do I find myself focusing on the most extreme or outrageous ideas and people on the other side, thereby making it hard to see how any reasonable person could remain in that group? Often, sometimes, or never.
Ready for 4? All right. Question 4. How often do I find myself comparing the worst people on the other side to the best people on my side? Often, sometimes, or never.
Number 5. How often do I feel a rush of pleasure with friends when we ridicule those crazies on the other political side? Often, sometimes, or never.
All right, last question. Which of the following is closest to my overall emotional attitude towards the majority of people who support the other side? Hate, they are enemies out to destroy the country. Disdain, they are ignorant and should know better. Pity, they are well-meaning but duped. Basic respect, they make contributions even if they are mostly off base. For respect and appreciation, they make unique and necessary contributions.
So now you've got 6 answers to 6 questions. We're going to give you a couple minutes to just sit with those, go over your answers, and assess your degree of inner polarization. Please keep the focus on yourself and your own attitudes, not on how difficult those other people are. So this is an exercise in humility, not in indirectly bashing the other side. So if you find yourself thinking, they are so awful that I find it hard to rise above my justifiably negative attitude, then you're kind of missing the point of the exercise. After a short amount of time, we'll put you in a breakout room with some other participants where you'll get to share some of what you've learned. So again, the issue is on self-assessment. And then in the full workshop, we talk about ways to counteract that. So what did you learn about yourself when it comes to polarizing attitudes towards? All right, let's look at this handsome guy.
Oh, him. All right. Well, some of you may scoff, maybe not even you, but people in the world. You're going to encounter people when you tell them about this work. I've got family members who think I'm crazy. Why would you even bother? My brother, in fact, says, why would I want to talk to those people? So some people will scoff at our attempts to feel better and to build better relationships with those on the other side politically. Some may even openly act against coming together. But we're going to leave you, with some upcoming events, but we're going to leave you on this slide with that quote from Abraham Lincoln, once again, that we shared at the beginning. And I hope that you all have greater appreciation for his wisdom when he says, I do not like that man. I must get to know him better. And with that, let's show you what we have coming up. So if you've been intrigued enough and you want to take a next step with anything, you want to experience one of our workshops, experience a debate, here is what we have coming up. These are all online, and these are with the Oregon-based team that includes Elise, myself, and about 20 volunteers that work to put this stuff on. Next week, if there are anybody in this room who leans conservative, there is a workshop specifically for what we call reds, called being red in a blue environment. So that's to help those who live in an area where the opposite point of view is generally assumed to be correct. The week after, we have a red-blue workshop, and that's a two-part, almost 6 hours in total workshop where we really dig into stereotypes and we have conversations across the divide. Then some of the others we've alluded to, families and politics, just in time for Thanksgiving, skills for bridging the divide to help you learn how to communicate your point in a way it's not off-putting, and help you learn how to listen to somebody when they're trying to communicate their point to you. And of course, social media, such a big issue right now. And we have a workshop to help you navigate the crazy world of social media. All of these, let me drop into the chat. All of these can be found on our Oregon page from the website. So if you go in the chat and click on that link, braverangels.org/Oregon. I've also linked the one-to-one conversation guide, because Dottie, you've been asking about how to have those conversations with other people who think differently. Like maybe you don't know any, but you're curious and you just want to know like how they came to believe what they believe and what is really behind their belief. Those one-to-one conversations on that page, you can sign up to be paired with somebody on the opposite side of the issue. There's different conversation guides. There's urban, rural. There is red, blue. I forget what the other ones are off the top of my head. And you can be paired with somebody, or if you know somebody that you've been wanting to talk to, but have been afraid that it's going to devolve into an argument, following the conversation guide will help keep it on the rails and from getting contentious. So please do check out both of those links. I hope to see you at one of our events, and I hope that this has been valuable for you.
And that is it, right? I think that's it.
That should be it.